And those of you who've worked with her in the past really know the power of her presence and her heart. And she's going to talk to us today about Ascension Through the Chakras. So welcome, Lisa Marie.
Yay. Thank you so much, Judy. I'm so grateful and honored to be here. So yes, I'm Lisa Marie, shakti-ma, and basically what I do in a nice jiffy little title is I bring powerful transmissions to radically expand consciousness and elevate frequency. But on the more title, I'm a healer, I'm a divine catalyst, and I'm a teacher. And so I come today with you guys to talk about Ascension Through the Chakras. And so the reason that I like to talk about this and kind of the reason that I think it's valuable is because our chakras really hold all of the information for our own personal being, but not just for this incarnation. It holds all of our information of kind of what we are here to experience, perhaps heal or overcome with regards to all of our parallel lives and other experiences, as well as the chakras are our path to ascension. So this is based off of several different traditions of teaching, as well as the Law of One, also known as Ra, and also just things that I've channeled information, my own personal experiences through the ascension process. And it's really based off of densities, the densities correlating to our chakra system. And I don't want to go in detail about this. I just want to briefly touch on the fact that I'm speaking of densities, not dimensions. So those two are different. Dimensions are much more like space-time, how we relate to space-time. And densities really are clearly the ascension through consciousness, okay? So another thing to be aware of with this is that it's very much like the rainbow. I mean, quite literally. Like when you look at the rainbow and you look at the colors of the chakra, they match up. And just like the rainbow, it's a spectrum of light. So as the orange turns to yellow, it's not like as the red turns to orange or orange turns yellow, either way. It's not like red and then a line and orange and then a line and then yellow, right? It's red slowly turning to orange, slowly turning to yellow. So that's a very important thing to kind of bear in mind as I go through this explanation, because you're never just like, ascending directly. You're in the third and then you're in the fourth and then you're in the fifth. You can be in multiple densities at one time in the ascension process. So it's not always that clear-cut line, just like anything to do with awareness and consciousness. It's always much more subtle than that. Let's put it that way. So today we're going to talk about the different chakras, what they represent, and how they correlate to our individual ascension process. I am going to focus primarily on the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, because those are really what we're working in as humanity. So I'll go over the other ones, but I'm going to dive into those ones in particular. And I think we're at the point where Judy and I determined that you guys can ask questions. We're not really sure how we decided that just yet. Did we, Judy? Did we decide?
Yeah, people can do it on the chat, or they can raise their hand, however they want to do it.
Sweet. So yeah, you can either chat, send in a question, or raise your hand. And I'm happy to stop as we're going and answer questions, or do it at the end. I'm totally flexible. I just go with the flow. All right, so starting with, ultimately, we actually have 8 densities. And we also have 8 chakras. You have a chakra above your head. And again, there's ones that go above and below those that are correlating to other octaves. So a whole nother set of densities. But the first 7, as we know within our bodies, root to crown chakra, are like the most primary ones that we speak of. But I will even be talking about the 8th density and the 8th chakra. So starting with the first density and correlating that to the first chakra, and of course the rainbow. So it starts in the red color. And just if you're not completely sure, your root chakra is located at your perineum, at your body. So the very bottom of your body, and it points downwards. And so with regards to the density, this is the very first physical creation, the physical expression of the one main energy of awareness, love, light. So creation itself is the fundamental energies of awareness, love, and light. And although it was simultaneous, that's kind of how they initially came through from what we call the absolute, which is nothingness. So from nothingness, creation was created. First, awareness of itself. So the absolute, the nothingness, became aware of itself through creation. And then it manifested love. And just to clarify, although I'm sure most of you realize, we're speaking of unconditional love here, right? Not the love that we think of in humanity. I love you. It's the unconditional, absolute love. And then from love was light created. And so light is where all of matter is essentially created via light waves. And so this is what we speak of. A lot of times you may have heard, that our reality is holographic, and how that's starting to be more and more scientifically proven, because it's all light. So awareness, love, light is the essential container of creation, the initial energy of source, God, love, isness, beingness, existence, all of that, all of those beautiful words. So from that energy was the first form of physical manifestation. So that's the root chakra. So the root chakra, the main experience there, because every chakra, every density, correlating those two together, right, is an experience and or a lesson or something that an entity is meant to experience and learn within that density to help them evolve. And not only does that experience, lesson, and learning evolve the entity, at the same time, that entity is adding information back into source. So the universe is learning through each and every single one of us, through each and every single entity, because all of us are experiencing and expressing individually and uniquely. And so nobody has ever experienced what you personally have experienced. And so through your experience and through your ascension, you are teaching, so to speak, the universe. Pretty fun to think of it that way. And we teach each other. Okay, so I want to say one more thing, and that is, if you guys have ever heard of the 100 Monkey Project, it's where they have researched monkeys spread out all over the globe, right? And I'm going to chop this up extremely, because I don't really remember the whole research project, but I know the point of it is that within the 100 monkeys, if 100 monkeys have gained some sort of awareness or learning, then the monkeys that aren't even connected to them also gain that same awareness or learning. And that's because, of course, that we're all interconnected. And so it's really important, and I love to bring this in, that when we go through our experience and our learning, again, we are teaching the universe, but we're also teaching each other, and we're also teaching other beings and entities that exist within our universe. So it's a very, very beautiful process. And that's one of the points or reasons why we're here. The grand old question of why do we exist? And that is to experience, to learn, and to grow, ultimately. So back to the first density in the root chakra. So that density, that experience, and that learning there is of beingness. And so this is the density of elements, like the wind, the water, the fire, the earth. And so it's just simple elements. And we think, or we like to think in humanity, that these things don't have any consciousness. So they are not conscious, but they contain consciousness. And the first density is one of the longest densities in its expression. It takes a very, very long time, millions of years of that first density, of these elements, of this first physical manifestation. As that first physical manifestation begins to just do its thing, the water, the fire, the earth, the air, and spirit, and rub up against itself and have all of these experiences, it gains more and more consciousness. And so, again, the first density is all about just physical expression. So it's a really important thing to also be aware of in yourself. Your root chakra has very much to do with the physical one, your physical body, but also your physical reality. So it's everything to do with what you can see and experience physically, as well as your own physical body. So first density, just experience via beingness. What a beautiful thing, right? Maybe we should all go back to that. Can I just be and rub up against a rock for a couple million years? I'm just joking. So then it moves into the second density. So the second chakra, also known as the sacral chakra. So about 2 inches below your belly button, both in the front and also in the back. A lot of times the rear chakras aren't expressed. So I like to always point out that they go through your body. There are energetic centers on both sides, front and back. So the second density, and this is the density of growth and movement. And so as elements and consciousness moves from elements, and again, the spectrum, right? Because there's always a movement through the density. So it's not just a direct line, but that consciousness will start to turn into things like plants, bugs, maybe even like lizards, reptilians, lower, and actually I should even back up there. I'm just reminded right now, it even goes before that is like single cell animals and those kinds of, very, very, very simple beings. So after the elements, it moves into those single cell animals. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I can see the images. I know a lot of them from diving and living in the ocean and like plankton and things like that. Very, very simple structures. And so it moves into those spaces and slowly into more things like plants, reptiles, bugs, and then into more things like direct animals. And then even higher second density consciousness is actually moves into pets. It moves from like things like wolves and pack animals who start to work as a team and move as a team, and I'll explain this in a little bit, into pets and animals that are taken care of by humans. So again, the second density is growth and movement. So through animals beginning to experience themselves and kind of their relationship to, the external, the physical, right? And you can really think about what comes through right now that I really like is like kind of like evolution, right? We think of how evolution directly affects nature. So like how certain animals live in certain places and they have certain things that are adaptive to that particular climate or those particular available food sources, and they're learning through this process, and then they are reproducing, and there is evolution through that process of learning with regards to the physical. So growth and movement with regards to the physical reality. And then again, as it progresses up the spectrum of second density, and we're getting to more evolved animals, like pack animals, and of course, things like elephants and dolphins are highly evolved beings. I wouldn't call them second density beings quite personally, but if we want to think of them directly, they would be upper level second density beings. And then like pack animals and particularly wolves, where they are beginning to have a sense of a community. And again, they are working together. So they're not single, and they have a higher consciousness, a higher understanding of love and care, right? If you even go from like reptiles to mammals, where you see that reptiles are often having eggs and then they leave, and the babies are born and you're on your own, sweetheart, like make it or don't. Whereas you move into mammals and there's much more like care given from the mother, from the parents to the babies, right? So it's important to start to see that phase where it starts to shift in consciousness through second density, where they start to become more aware, more nurturing of one to the other. And then, of course, like I said, the pack mentality. So they see themselves as a one individuated, a pack moves as a one individuated self, but they work together. So they have to understand each other and how each other are working. And so again, there starts to become in the upper second density a beginning of understanding of perceived separation. And that's where I'm going to get into the third density, but I'm kind of leading you guys in there because I want to show you how the evolution really goes through the density. So we start off as very simple beings, and then we move to like wolves or elephants, who are very high conscious beings that are really beginning to understand, hey, I'm here, you're over there. With pets or animals, even, because I don't really consider like horses necessarily pets. I love horses. I'm a big horse advocate, but animals that are taken care of by humans, it really, and you guys are all going to love to hear this if you have animals and you're an animal lover, but it really ascends them. It really helps their ascension process. And that's one of the things that we as humans do for all of the beautiful animals in our lives. We know that they do so much for us, but we actually help them to ascend in their consciousness. Why? Because one of the greatest things we do is we give them a name, and we treat them like what? An individual. So again, third density, we start to move into the perception of separation and of the self. I am Lisa Marie. And so with pets, we call them names, we start to talk to them, we interact with them as though they are a separate self. And so they start to really take that in, and that helps them to ascend into 3D. So this is where I really want to spend a lot of time, third density, fourth density, because this is where a lot of us are. So third density, and I'm going to put, of course, the emphasis, so the lesson or the experience within this density is the perception of separation. So of course, big emphasis there on perception, because we're not separate, but it is part of our experience to perceive to be separate. And there's so much beauty here that I would love to share with you guys, because we can be like, why would we ever want to do that? Why would we ever want to experience separation? And through my own journey and through what I've assisted with other people having similar journeys, it's one of those things where when you move away from something, or you separate yourself from something, or you lose something, or whatever it is, you really begin to realize what it is that you lost or that you separated yourself from. And so the ultimate reintegration, so to speak, even though it's not really how it happens, because we don't need to reintegrate, we never actually left, but reintegrate through awareness is a much deeper understanding of who we are within all of consciousness, within the one. So that's the whole point behind experiencing perceived separation. So this is the third chakra, the solar plexus. So it's, excuse me, it's the chakra of identity. And so when we think of ego, this is really where the ego comes in, because you can see that animals don't really have an ego as we've defined it. So when we move into 3D, we begin to say, I am this. And then we label ourselves till the end of time with all the things that we think we are. So again, the beauty of that is that we get to experience a very perceived individuated expression of source energy, of love. And the other expressions of third density are that there is a physical reality that is separate from us. So like the universe, this reality, that just all is. And I am moving through it. I'm living in it. And life happens to me. Experiences happen to me. So there's no real interaction within that belief. It just simply, this is reality and I'm living in it. Okay. So that's an important thing to connect to. Yeah, and then the real part of that is the disassociation, the disempowerment, in a sense, of our own self within our life. And of course, the separation of each other, right? So you're over there, I'm over here. Your name is that, my name is this. And of course, it goes into all kinds of expressions as of like races and nationalities and masculine, feminine. So there's all that awareness of all of that. So you can already, I'm sure, begin to see how the vast majority of our experiences within humanity are very rooted within the distortion of third density. So all of these problems with inequality of male, female, of course, race, of course, power. So when we believe that we are separate, we then believe that we have to fight to survive. We then believe we have to fight for power. So all of that power and all of those stories are all created within that perceived separation. And as well as what comes through right now is also material belongings, right? Like you have that money, I have this money. You have that house, I have this house. So again, that's all amplified within that experience. So I do want to bring in a little bit of other understanding, a little bit deeper understanding into third density. Second density is very correlated with the emotional body. It's where one starts to connect to the emotional body. Like I said, with the higher density animals, they begin to nurture, to take care of. You can see higher density, higher consciousness, second density animals grieve. They grieve for the death of another. Like elephants are an extraordinary example of that, as well as I've seen horses and dogs. So they start to experience emotion. The emotional body, sacral chakra. Third density is the mental body. And so it becomes much more of the mind, right? And so of course, not to say that animals aren't intelligent or anything like that, but again, it's much more of an analytical mind. And humans, as we know, have extraordinary minds. We have learned to create and engineer and calculate all kinds of things because we really stepped into the mental body. Now, just a little bit of extra information as far as humanity goes. Humanity had a lot of influences within us from lots of different spaces, lots of different channels, where we were heavily influenced into our connection to the mental body. What do I mean by that? I mean that we really left behind a lot of our emotional body, and we left behind a lot of our intuition, our gut instinct. And you can see this again in our current situation, and you can most definitely see this in our history. And this was a lot of our swinging within humanity to a masculine-driven society. And I don't mean necessarily just men, I mean the masculine energy, because we all have feminine and masculine energies within us. So women can be just as masculine. But the masculine-driven society, where it is also very analytical and mentally driven. So we ditched a lot of our intuition. We ditched a lot of our connection to the universe many, many years ago. And quite frankly, it was deemed, evil or wrong or not, all kinds of things throughout our history. So it was suppressed and it was deemed wrong. And so we were very driven by what? If you don't have your intuition, you don't have your connection, natural connection to the universe, you're very driven by your mind. So again, that's what the third chakra already has, is that mental body and the mind. But then humanity got a little extra push. So we've been mind driven for a very, very long time. So beautiful things have occurred because of that, right? We have amazing medical and science and technology because of that. But at the same time, you can see where we have, I wouldn't say not benefited from it, but where we need to perhaps turn our attention now is more of that feminine, of that connection to nature, right? Connection to the universe, our intuition, our own internal guidance system. The other thing about the mind is it can be highly manipulated. Your intuition cannot be. So we've been in a space where we've been very, very mind-based, and that has definitely helped us to achieve a lot of things. But it has also created a lot of problems within our society. So within this expression of perceived separation, we have also, taken on a lot of fear, hate, shame, guilt, failure, expectations. And then, of course, one of the most powerful things that humanity is currently going through that is a direct representation of third density and perceived separation is victim perpetrator. So the belief that somebody did something to you, you are the victim, or you did something to somebody else and you are the perpetrator. And so you'll understand how that gets kind of not debunked, but it gets ascended. The awareness of that changes as we start to move up into the higher densities. But that one belief there of victim perpetrator is really very, very, very present right now within humanity. And one of the things that we're really currently working to resolve and to heal. It also is the idea of right and wrong, good and bad, light and dark, evil, whatever, all of those duality. Okay, because in the perception of separation is where duality is then experienced. So even within the duality of, like a good day, bad day, or good emotion, a bad emotion, it is the belief, duality creates the belief that something is better than another, something is lacking and another thing has, right? Because, hey, joy and bliss and love feels so much better than like anger and sadness and frustration. So we perceive those emotions to lack, to not be as enjoyable. And so this is one of the things that we are trying to understand. And I want to really bring it in for you guys so that you can really understand this a little bit deeper, so that you can take yourself into some other higher levels of consciousness. The other thing that third density represents is linear time. And this is very correlating to the dimensions. So the fourth dimension is of linear time. And as we move into the fifth dimension, we start to change that into more of a quantum expression. We are currently moving into a energy that is, or a consciousness that is not linear time based. And it's not going away completely. We're still going to have a concept of time. But you may have already experienced how time has changed a little bit. You may personally have experienced how things either speed up or have slowed down. Usually most people feel that they've have sped up. But even within the overall experience of time, you'll begin to experience that time has much more fluidity to it, that it is not straight linear. And that you in this incarnation also has a much broader expression than linear time. So I'm sure you guys have heard about, the now, the moment. There is only the now. And this is the expression where everything was created at once. So all already exists. So all of the things that you can imagine already exists. All of the versions of yourself that you think you could be or you think you have been already exist. And so as we start to move, and I don't want to get too off track with third density, but I wanted to explain a little bit about linear time. So we start to move out of third density, we start to understand that time, that the universe is more like a collage of snapshots. And so what we do through our awareness is we create linear time, because we put them together in a linear form. This happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. And now I've got a history of my life into linear time. However, all of those moments are always there, always have been. So it's like you have all of the snapshots of your entire life laid out all in one moment. And you're taking your awareness and moving like your focus of your eyes, right? And moving them from one photo to the next, and thus making linear time. Okay, I did this, and then I did that, and then I did this, and then I did that, and then I went over there, and you're creating a timeline. But we're getting to be able to realize that time is more malleable. And again, that all of that is existing at the same time. So the past isn't really as it seems, and nor is the future really as it seems. And with meditation and consciousness, you can directly go into experiences of the quote unquote past or of the quote unquote future, because they're all here and available. And this is also why I don't really subscribe to the term past lives. I prefer to use parallel lives or parallel realities or parallel timelines. Because even if we perceive that it was a life where you were, in the Victorian time frame, again, time is not linear. So that all is. And it's so hard for us to wrap our minds around that. But it's very, very empowering and very, very expansive once you begin to really start to experience this level of consciousness. Because again, you can start to travel through time. So that is third density. So fourth density is where we are evolving as a consciousness, as a collective consciousness of humanity. And I'm just feeling into, no, okay. So fourth density, the experience or the learning that wishes to occur for fourth density is love and understanding. And I like to call it unity awareness. It's not full unity consciousness, but it's the beginning to be aware that we are unified, that we are connected. It's probably a better way to put it. Because in fourth density, we're not really unified. We're more connected. So as we begin to come into fourth density, we begin to open our heart space, okay, right? Because this is fourth chakra, the chakra of self-love, love of others, compassion, understanding. So within this density, first off, we are starting to let go of the idea of separation. We're starting to realize that, hey, yeah, maybe you're over there and I'm over here, but we're connected. And one of the things that comes up right now is, for those of you who are empathic or who can feel subtle energies, you can most definitely tap into energies of other people, whether they're standing next to you or whether they're across the globe, because we're all connected, right? Like I do all of my work over Zoom calls because location doesn't really exist as far as energy is concerned. We're all connected. So the belief of separation starts to, again, like I said, this is a spectrum, much like the rainbow, right? So it's not like we just go from believing in separation to bam, believing that we're all connected. It's a slow process through the spectrum of light. But we start to begin to understand that we're all connected. And because of that, we start to have deeper levels of compassion, understanding, and acceptance for each other. Because, hey, if we're all connected, we've got to work together more. We've got to come together more in much more of a unified sense to assist each other. And that love, that compassion starts to really be the underlying force of our actions. So instead of third density, where we are really trying to gain power, fourth density is more about trying to support each other. In fourth density, we begin to realize that our reality is not separate. Our physical reality is not separate from us. We start to see how we directly influence the holographic reality of our existence, how our thoughts, our beliefs are reflected back to us. And it's so much fun. And right now it's even more exaggerated, so to speak. Right now, we call it manifestation, but I like to make it really aware that we're always manifesting. We're just now more aware of our manifestation abilities. And it's very fast. So you start to think of things, and I'm sure you guys have noticed this. Like maybe you're thinking like, I'd really like to go camping. And then all of a sudden somebody's talking to you about camping and you see an ad on TV about camping. And all of a sudden all this camping is showing up in your reality. And you're like, wow, that's incredible. Because we are also in a higher dimension of time space, right? But we're starting to really open our eyes to how this is not reality's here and I'm just in it. This is a moving consciousness. We are consciousness, it is consciousness, and it is interacting with us. That's a really exciting space to be in, to realize that there's interaction there. And of course, reflection. Fourth density also offers the understanding. So it's kind of like when we talk about, I'm sure you guys have heard, the term when we awaken, right? A spiritual awakening, or the awoke, or the conscious people. So fourth density is when that starts to happen, when we start to become aware of, again, that we're all connected, but we also start to become aware of higher mind, higher self. This is where we start to potentially receive messages or connect to the potential that we could receive messages from a higher mind, or even from other beings. We start to believe that other beings exist. We start to believe that the universe is very massive. And again, all interconnected. So this is a lot right now of what humanity is going through. And so you can see through some of just the direct experiences. Oh, there was one more thing I wanted to bring up about third density. You can see through some of the direct experiences of what we are going through as a society with regards to, racism and again, like inequality and a lot of just the different ways in which we've separated ourselves and labeled ourselves and created groups, and the whole politically correct speech, and you have to say something because that offends me, right? Because remember I was talking about victim perpetrator of third density, that you offended me. As we start to step into fourth density, we start to take it all much more in a space of acceptance. Oh, okay, yeah, that was kind of messed up what you said, but not taking it so personally, which is a really, really beautiful space when we get in there. One thing I want to backtrack with third density that I wanted to say, because this is really important, is that there's a direct correlation with third density and the vagus nerve and kind of our step out of third density. So these were messages I started to get last year, and it really started to come in January, February. And quite frankly, I didn't even know what the vagus nerve was when I started. It started to come in through healings with my clients. I started to see it happening. I was given information. I didn't know what the vagus nerve was. So I had to do a little bit of research. And again, I am by no way means a doctor, but what I do know is the messages and experiences that I've had with regards to the vagus nerve. So the information I received about the third density and the vagus nerve. So I'm sure many of you know the vagus nerve is a massive channel system of nerves that runs from the small intestines up through the gut, the kidneys, the pancreas, up into the lungs and the heart, and then up into connects to the brain. So this massive expressway, I like to say, that connects the gut to the brain, like a highway of information. Okay. So third density, here we were in this, I'm here, you're there, fighting for power, fighting for material, fighting for ourselves. And what was created was as we know, the fight or flight instinct that we already had as second density beings. The vagus nerve is very correlated with the fight or flight instinct. And so what we started to experience was an addiction within that, and not a conscious addiction. It wasn't like, oh yeah, man, I'm addicted to the fight or flight, but it was an addiction to that adrenaline rush. And then the drop that we experienced after the adrenaline rush. So we wanted the adrenaline rush again. This all occurred because we really believed that we were separate, and we really believed, especially humanity, because there's other third density beings, by the way, outside of this planet, but humanity especially really believed that we had to work our asses off in order to survive, in order to achieve, in order to be successful. And we can really see this in the US, where we had, again, beautiful experiences through that, beautiful expressions of rapid growth within our country. But it really created this like go, 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 do mentality, or else. If you stop working, if you stop going, you're going to fail, you're going to, suffer, you're going to, and the subtle energy there, the subtle belief there is you're going to die. Of course, it's not conscious, but it's subtle. So that kicks in the fight or flight, right? You got to go, go, go. I am trying to survive. It's a survival instinct. It was a very high level consciousness of survival instinct, but it was still survival instinct. And so this go, 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 do. So again, we weren't connected in third density to the natural rhythm of the universe. If you look at the universe, if you look at Gaia, our planet, if you look at the oceans, if you look at everything, there is a rhythm. It's not just this flood of energy all the time. There is an ebb, a flow, right? Just like the tides. It comes in, it goes out, it moves over here, it goes over there. There's a flow of energy. But humanity was like, no, we're not going to even acknowledge that. We're just going to push all the time. And so when ebb energy was present within us, very correlated to the moon and to planets and to the whole universe, our whole solar system, we would push through that ebb. And we would really be, and you can see this in our bodies, we are drained, we are exhausted. There's adrenal fatigue, there's autoimmune, there's compromised body, there's loads of problems with guts, it's all these health problems because a lot of the reason, not all the reason, but a lot of the reason was this push and this survival and this addiction to that fight or flight. So the constant fighting. So right now that is being healed within the collective, healed within humanity. And the other part of that is, like I said, the gut and the brain. Again, because third density, we were very, very mind driven. We really cut off the connection between our gut and our brain. And our heart, quite frankly. Just got a little reminder there. Very important. They're really learning the intelligence of the heart, but also the gut has a lot of intelligence as well. We talk about gut instinct and intuition. So we were really shutting off that pathway and that communication system. So all of that is opening back up and healing for fourth density, where we can live in a much more harmonious way within our own bodies, within each other, and then within nature on the planet, right? I mean, again, we can see what we did to our planet by simply ignoring it and ignoring what it was trying to tell us and show us. And of course, not just we did, a lot of influences there, but you can't, now we've had a direct influence on that. And so coming back into harmonious living, even if we haven't done everything that we did to our planet, can we not do more things to support the planet? Most definitely. So even if it's not 100% humanity's fault, humanity can most definitely work in a more harmonious way with the planet, with the universe, with all of the energies in which to have fluidity. Quite frankly, we have a lot of rigidity within our life, within our society, on our planet. There's so much available to us, and we're not connected to a lot of it, and we're constantly fighting to get it. So fourth density is that awareness of all of that and that opening up to starting to experience and connect to how do we live harmoniously? How do we take all of these energies that are present and really, really use them for our benefit, but also for the benefit of everybody? So, of course, a very beautiful space. And it starts to really let go of a lot of different identity and separation. So while we all still get to have our unique expression, I'm still me and you're still you, we're not so like battling of, no, this is where how I have to be and that's how you have to be. It's more of like, hey, we can still be ourselves and still work together and still, come and harmonize in that way and unify to some degree, although I'm careful to use that word for that density. So you can really see how the vast majority of humanity, society, is currently moving from third density to fourth density. And a lot of what's being brought up, including the coronavirus, has a lot to do with all of these massive healings and expansion in our collective consciousness. And so the things that we're being asked to do, we're being asked to accept, forgive, love, understand each other. And with fourth density, is the connection to the heart. And I invite all of you to watch the, I just forgot it. Oh, The Black Hole with a W by Nassim Haramein. He's a unified physicist and he is absolutely extraordinary. He is really connecting science with spirituality and making really massive breakthroughs that are beginning to really, again, prove these things. Because of course, a lot of us want that proof, and it's starting to happen because we're in the space where we're starting to connect the dots. We're starting to understand, hey, guess what? Spirituality and even religion, in a sense, doesn't have to be separate than science. It can actually not only work together, but really support each other, where they're actually backing each other up, and expansion and acknowledgement and more information is happening within the collaboration of the two. So he's definitely massive influence on that. So the heart space has been really understood as the point of where we have the essence of our soul, where we have the connection to all others. Another one, Drunvalo Melchizedek, he's a spiritual teacher, but he teaches a very heart-centered meditation where you can go into a part through consciousness of your heart and really be connected to everything and everybody. And this is why we talk about, heart math is another one that's really extraordinary on the expression of, the heart being the second brain or a whole nother brain in itself. It has its own consciousness. But it is the connection. If you really think about the 7 chakras, it is the center point. It is the middle. So what I mean by that? I mean that it really connects the higher densities or the etheric to the physical. So the fourth density is that bridge. It is that gateway. So the other thing that we start to experience in fourth density that we start to let go of third density is the belief of right or wrong. And so I want to be really clear on this because this really triggers a lot of people. Like, oh, well, if we're just going to throw away right or wrong, right, we're going to have mass hysteria and all kinds of bad things. But again, this isn't the beginning of fourth density. Remember, every density has a spectrum. So as we evolve through fourth density, what do we start to do? We start to really have acceptance of each other, love, and we start to work in harmony. And we start to connect to the self, which is located in the heart. When you start to really connect to the self, to higher consciousness, to deep, deep love, deep unconditional love. If you've ever meditated and you've achieved that, you understand exactly what I mean. It is very, very profound. It contains massive amounts of bliss, joy, just incredible energy. So when we meditate and we start to connect to that and we start to anchor into that more and more, we start to have what I like to term is inner integrity. And inner integrity works from love and within love. So it's not really about like, hey, is this the right thing to do? Or is this bad? Or is this good? You naturally move as you really anchor in the self. You naturally move within that expression, within service to others, within love, within trying to assist, within trying to help. So it's not that we just get rid of bad or good. The bad or good actually starts to not be necessary. Because if everybody was working in if everybody was working in simple inner integrity, right, we'd have a vastly different world. So when our collective starts to really work within that space, we're going to see that good or bad, all these labels of duality is going to start to fall away. So again, it's not going to just happen like we're going to just write off good or bad, right or wrong. It's just going to start to dissolve away as we come more centered into the heart space. So then fourth density has a beautiful expression, sometimes of, I don't really like to call it this, but it's my best way of labeling it as overlove. It's kind of like trying to help everybody, trying to, make the world a better place. And, with all due respect, because I have the utmost respect, a lot of activists work very strongly within the fourth density. So the fourth density still has a belief that within that love needs to do something. It needs to change the world. It's got to do action outside of itself, which is very beautiful. And I mean, if you're going to spread love and try to create a better world, that's really beautiful. But it can be kind of over the top sometimes. Fourth density beings, you can see they'll want to try to wake everybody up. They want to try to help everybody. They want to try to heal everybody. And it's often just kind of sometimes too much. So that's when we move into fifth density. Fifth density being the density of wisdom. So it's the fifth chakra. And so in this chakra, it's about expression. And I like to make it really clear that it's not just about verbal expression, it's about all the ways in which you express yourself. So your actions, the things that you wear, everything that you do is some sort of expression. And very correlated to the hands, like what you do and create with your hands are a form of expression. So, but fifth density, the density of wisdom. So as one starts to ascend from the fourth density to the fifth density, a couple of things happen. For one, you begin to realize that all is perfect. And I know that sounds super cliche, but it's not. And if you've experienced this, you'll know what I'm referring to. And if you haven't, you most definitely will when you step into fifth density. A lot of humanity, the light workers, the beings who are waking up before are becoming fifth density beings right now. So another reason I'm showing this to you guys, so you can kind of see where you are in the spectrum. And of course, it's not from I'm fifth density or anything like that, but it's just about awareness. Awareness is always one of the most powerful things that we can have. So awareness of where you are and kind of what's up for you and where you're going is always a beautiful space. And again, it's a spectrum. So it's not to say you're just going to move third to fourth to fifth. Okay, you might be coming into fifth and still be working on some third density attributes. Okay, so it's okay. So wisdom, about really seeing the perfection that everything already is. Everything already is perfect, exactly as it is. And so the need to take action just falls away. And I will admit, this can be quite abrupt. I experienced this myself, and I've seen several people experience this for them. All of a sudden, they're like, I don't want to do anything. And you'll notice yogis are part of this. It's a drawing in. So when you go through this, you'll find that you want to spend usually less time with other people. You want to spend more time by yourself, more time in introspection, more time maybe in meditation. and you're drawing back away from. And so it can feel kind of abrupt, and it can feel like you don't care anymore. You've given up, you don't care. And so there's of course, those are two very different things. So this does want to come through. There's a big difference between truly wanting to give up and coming into fifth density, right? So coming into fifth density, you're not like, there's not a heavy energy around you of, sadness or depression or wanting to, there can be an energy about wanting to leave the planet, but it's not necessarily like I'm going to end my life or anything like that. So there's no heaviness, okay? So that's the massive difference between potentially really wanting to leave and end your life versus coming into fifth density. But people get a little bit worried because they're like, whoa, here I was in this space of like, yeah, I love you, let's all work together. And now I find myself like, nope, I just want to be by myself. So they start to really question themselves. Is this okay? Is this right? Why am I doing this? So it's really a beautiful space to have awareness of it before it even happens to you. So that when it does happen to you, you're like, oh yeah, I got this. So it will be a little bit of a drawing away. Again, it's much more introspective. You want to turn in on yourself. You want to connect deeper within yourself. There is the letting go of the need for creating anything within the physical reality. Not to say that you don't create, it's the attachment to needing to. It's always the difference between, oh, I can create all day long and have no attachment to it, versus I have to create. That's where my value and my worth and my identity is, you see? So you start to let go of that. Again, you're letting go more of third density as well. And you start to just be happy, just simply being. And you draw away from needing validity from others, needing energy or power from others, needing, and I mean that by like spending time with other people and, needing support and inspiration and motivation from other people. You tend to start to turn and seek it within. And so this is like the density of the yogi. So if you've ever studied yoga, you know that they talk about, turning the senses, withdrawing from the senses. That's what I actually meant. Withdrawing from the senses, turning in. Not looking outside of yourself for everything, starting to look more within. And so that's the wisdom. The wisdom of the divine intelligence. The wisdom that you don't always need to do and put yourself out there and do all of these things to be valuable. That you're valuable, that you're worthy, regardless of if you just sat in meditation all day long. And then you get a little bit more, personal freedom within that. You find your space within that. And what comes through right now that I really like is there's a lot of purification that goes within that. And a couple of things with this. For one, if you're always around other people, your guys' energy fields are always intermingling. And if you're always even just talking to other people, there's a mingling of energies, even if it's over the phone. Again, because there's no real location. So as you start to draw in of yourself, you start to purify kind of all of that out of your space. There's a little bit more clarity of your ownness. What are your real beliefs? What are your perspectives? What are your thoughts? What are your emotions versus yours with others? What's your energy? And you start to really get a good availability and good connection to your own energy. So again, I want to bring up the yogis because they start to really connect to themselves and kind of where their energy field is. And this is where a lot more of energy workers start to really tap into, and tapping into their own energetic fields, tapping into other people's energetic fields, but really getting clarity of one's energy. Fifth density is also around authentic expression. And again, there's wisdom here. So fourth density, we express a lot from the heart. It's all very caring and loving. Fifth density, there's a real shift in expression, verbal expression. And it starts to become a more authentic space. And so it's not always about like, oh, gee, is this going to hurt somebody's feelings? Not to say that you wouldn't, because again, at that point, you're going to have inner integrity. So you're going to already be in a space of love. But it's not that politically correct. It's like, no, this is what I want to say. And it can be done in a way of love and understanding, but it's still like, no, I want to say this. I want to express this. This is who I am. This is what I feel. I do want to make a very clear distinction between authentic expression and speaking the mind, because they're not the same. Speaking one's mind is speaking one's thoughts and beliefs. Authentic expression is really speaking from the heart, quite frankly. Even though it's fifth density and fifth chakra, it's actually speaking from the heart and the authentic self, which is the true self. So authentic expression isn't even speaking from a traumatized space, the pain body. It's really from the heart. And so the beauty of that is there's an intelligence there. So when you really speak authentically and from the heart space, there's an intelligence about saying things that serve everybody for the higher good in that moment. But it's authentic and true. It's not made up. It's not from the mind. It's not, I think this is going to help somebody, or I think this is what needs to be said. It's very authentic from consciousness. So sixth density, and I'm going to start getting a little bit lighter on the expressions here, but I do want to go into sixth density because there are beings moving into sixth density, and some of you will move into sixth density if you haven't already. And this is true unity consciousness. So what do I mean by that? I mean that, so fifth density is oftentimes, it's also the density of light. And so it is where a lot of times entities and consciousness start to experience either a lighter body, which is what we're going to ultimately be doing. The collective is not there yet. So once the collective gets more to a fifth density, we're going to be experiencing much more light bodies. But some of you are already experiencing light bodies. Your frequency of your whole beingness is rising up. So, but actual fifth density beings, so not on this planet, but actually like a fifth density collective, may or may not have physical bodies. They start to move into light bodies. So again, through the spectrum of fifth density, whether they start off in a physical body and then move out of it or what have you, again, it's a spectrum. Sixth density, it's unity consciousness. There's no body. It is a consciousness that is working together. So there is still in sixth density some sort of individuality, but it's subtle. The individuality and the individuated expression is working as a collective. So that gives you kind of an idea if like a whole consciousness were sixth density, and that's where Ra pretty much was, sixth density consciousness. So in humans, until we lose our body and all of that happens, you can still have sixth density consciousness in a physical body. But you begin to really understand the unified self. You begin to really see every single person, every being, everything, including physical objects, as part of yourself, as the same. So where I was saying fourth density is kind of like unity awareness. This is unity consciousness. So it's a very different space. You're like, oh yeah, everything's connected. This is like, you feel there is no difference. And so within this, there's a real realization of I am, of your higher self. So if you've heard of the higher self, this is where we start to be our higher selves, that higher consciousness. This is where a lot of the divine, really divine intelligence starts to channel through. And you'll notice, I'm sure many of you have, how many people, beings, say a lot of the same stuff, or the essence is really similar. And that's because they're not really channeling, although, we can use that term, but they're just connected to the I am. They're connected to the unified self. So the divine intelligence is the divine intelligence, and it can come through and express through anybody. But there's that availability, because all of us are that. It's just our level of availability to that. And one of the things that came through recently for me that I'd love to share with you guys is on the atomic level, right? Even subatomic, whatever, however small you want to go, it's all the same energy. So we talk in spirituality a lot about embodying the higher self, but we're not actually embodying anything. We already are. You already are awareness, love, light. You already are infinite love. You already are divine intelligence, worthiness, abundance, all of this. But as we ascend, we become more available to ourselves, to that which we are. And so sixth density is that realization called self-realization, thus the availability to self, to that which you already are. So of course, this takes a whole new level of not having to be anything, not needing any sort of validation or anything from the external reality, because you already are everything you could ever possibly be. Doesn't mean you don't get to play. Your perspective on reality radically shifts from like having to do to playing. Because now, as you did with the previous densities, you have a very good understanding of, right, the malleability and how it's all interconnected, but now it takes it a step further. Your reality is you. You are your reality. There is absolutely no separation whatsoever. So it all becomes a massive playing field. The other thing that becomes really obvious is divine orchestration, which I love to talk about. When you become more in the moment, which you start doing in fourth density, and then in fifth densities, you start to turn introspective and on yourself, start to really connect to what is right now in this moment, because you're all by yourself. You spend a lot of time alone. You start to really connect to that. And so upper fifth density, you start to already experience this. And then fifth density, it's like this whole other level of really seeing the divine orchestration of every single moment. Why does something occur? Nothing is random. Nothing is luck or not luck or bad luck. Everything is divinely orchestrated. And I get to see and experience this all the time. And divine orchestration is both vast and infinite, and then extremely detailed and almost like finite in its expression. It can come into the smallest, seemingly littlest details, and at the same exact moment, be on a universal quantum level. And so it's this realization, and through this there can be, the sixth density offers a level of surrender. Because as the higher self, or your expression of the higher self, you begin to understand much more subtleties of why everything is occurring a specific way. And there's more of a surrender into the moment and what wishes to arise, what wishes to flow through us, rather than an identity to, I want to do this, I want to create that. It starts to become what wishes to arise, what wishes to flow through me. And that movement of that energy of the I am, the movement of the energy of source or divine intelligence through you. And so surrender to that space in some way you lose control, so to speak, but control is all an illusion. We're never really in control. Does free will exist? Yes, but it has many layers to it. We have free will, we make lots of choices, but on the big picture of things, a lot of things we've already chosen for ourselves within this life, right? Like you already chose your body, you already chose your family, you already chose a lot of your talents and things that you were going to experience within this life. Those were already chosen for you by you. So in this incarnation, you no longer have that free will. But the higher you go in consciousness, the more free will you gain. And ironically enough, the more you surrender. Your will, so to speak, changes. It's a more real service to all that is, right? Because again, if you're really unified, if everything is, you want to assist everything, but it's assistance, it's service from now a balance. Sixth density is also about balance of love and wisdom. You're not overly love, you're not overly wisdom. You've let go of this retracting, you come back into service, you come back into intermingling and being and assisting and serving. But now you're very balanced on love and wisdom. And you're serving from that unified self of if I help all of this, it helps everything. So your will is very different because it's not like I need this, I want this. It's a will of divine truth, consciousness, a will of the highest good. Yeah, that was a little more clear. Will of the highest good. So that's a true collective consciousness. We refer to humanity as a collective consciousness because we are connected, but a true collective consciousness is sixth density, where actually the beings are all interwoven. And one thing I forgot to mention, it came through and then I forgot to mention, I'm being reminded about fourth density is where we start to experience telepathy as we start to realize that we're connected, right? So you guys may have already been experiencing this. I experience it every single day. And so sixth density is, where it's not even telepathy anymore. It's not like, oh, I read your mind. It is of one mind. So seventh density just making sure I was done with sixth density. Seventh density is the density of completion. And this is where one starts to turn away from all other entities because it's complete in its consciousness. There in seventh density is no individuated self whatsoever. And it's a movement back into source. So sixth density beings have a lot of teaching and wanting to, as the higher self. So again, you are then the higher self, but let me make sure I'm clear in this. Your higher self is your sixth density self that is guiding, teaching you right now. So then you come into that consciousness. Then if you were to move into seventh density, you're not turning and you're turning away. You're not any longer wanting to guide or teach other beings. So sixth density is kind of the last density of wanting to serve others, teach others, assist others, even of yourself, even of your own expression. So seventh density, you're complete. So now you're turning actually back into source. So dissolving back into source and letting go of any and all identity whatsoever. So there are some beings that we've had in our history where they have reached this state of being and it's full self-realization of the I, of source, of God, of creation. And those beings couldn't even necessarily take care of themselves, or their care of them of self was very limited or forced, because at that point they don't see themselves as anything. So even feeding and taking care of the self either dissolves and they have to have people take care of them, or it's something they have to consciously force themselves to keep doing to stay in the physical body. And then the eighth density is basically the gap between the octaves. So it's kind of like the pause. And, you know, this, of course, I have no experience with that I remember. So this is just channeled information and stuff I've learned. But it is the pause of before, so this octave of experience and ascension. So pause in creation before, you know, again, there's no linear time, but before the ascension of the next octave would occur. So there we have it.
Thank you. Thank you. I have, people, I just want to note that people are having a hard time getting onto the Zoom call. And so most people are on YouTube right now. And so Jerry wanted me to say thank you for talking in terms of densities, you know, that from the Book of One, the Law of One, was it? That really kind of clarifies things for, you know, a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And I have a couple of questions here. I don't know if you ever read a book by Anodea Judith. She does a lot of chakra work, and she wrote a book a number of years ago about basically saying that that humanity's experience on the planet has been, as a collective and as individuals, but as a collective, a journey through the chakras, right? Through that first, you know, 100,000 years was the first chakra, and then, you know, and then like the last 10,000 years, really the dominant expression has been in that third chakra kind of power center. And that, like you said, we're moving into this fourth awareness. And one of the things, this fourth density, and she posited that once a critical mass of humanity sort of moved more into that fourth awareness, that kind of the fourth, fifth, and sixth chakras of the planet would kind of come online like all at once. Almost like, because that fourth awareness is the connection between the lower chakras and the higher chakras. Mm-hmm. And I've heard a distinction made between the planet, which I've heard defined as the earth and all of the consciousnesses that reside within it, right? All of the animals, all of the everything in the noosphere, and then the plant, the earth, which is just the physical manifestation of it. So it's a really interesting kind of idea that the earth is evolving as we are, that we're doing this together, right? Yes. And you mentioned the animals are evolving as well. I think that's a really, that's a lovely idea. Mm-hmm. It takes that we're all in this together thing and makes it quite literal.
Yeah, and there's been some, you know, the ancient Indian teachings show how we go through cycles of consciousness, you know, and humanity fell in consciousness, and now we're coming up in our awareness, and our actual solar system is, you know, I've heard things about our solar system being in certain areas of the universe that are also, again, like basically help with our awakening, with our evolvement through the consciousness. As far as what I've received, and to kind of go along with what you were saying, yeah, definitely as a certain number of humans reach, like you said, critical mass, it'll be this much more like kind of explosiveness, even though it feels quite explosive right now, quite frankly, but it will be much more rapid. And the earth herself does have chakras as well. And this is something that many of the tribal communities have spoken about, and as well as Drunvalo Melchizedek and a couple of other beings who are connected to the tribal communities who have mentioned these chakras. There's many different write-ups as to where the chakras are and what they represent. I don't see a lot of clarity within that. But as far as answering your question, will they open up? Gaia, the planet, already opened up quite significantly, and she already extended in her energetic field to fourth density and a little bit almost into fifth density, that she's holding that space. So, but it definitely is that connecting space, the fourth chakra is, and it just creates a lot of availability in the mind, and what comes through right now is an acceptance, right? Acceptance of these other ideas, acceptance of these other influences. So as people step into fourth density, and as the mass collective does, that availability and that acceptance of that will really amp up.
Mm. I'm getting questions by text as well. So someone mentioned, what you mentioned, moving into that fifth awareness, fifth density. And that idea about, so her experience was that she was an activist. She was very active. She one day she was making signs. She went, she got signs, she did the whole thing, and she drove up to the point where the protest was going to be, and she said something just shifted instantly, and she said, I'm done.
Right.
And it wasn't a rejection of the this very, very righteous causes that people are protesting for or against, and she said it just kind of hit her. She dropped off the signs and she just kept driving, because she was like, what's going on? Right. And so I'm wondering, I think a lot of us are going to be kind of experiencing that. I know people are getting burnt out. I know people are getting tired and stuff, but that's a different energy, right?
Yes.
That's
why the clarity wanted to come in. It's a very different energy.
Exactly. So how to navigate that when that kind of comes through, when things just shift on a dime like that? What are the tools you recommend?
Yeah, I love that. So usually within one of those shift on a dime type moments, there isn't always a lot of clarity within the moment. Within that exact moment, there's often confusion. Because she's probably like, using her as an example, like, what? I was so all for this and now I'm not? Like, what? There's just confusion. But to me, when my experience of going through the journey, confusion is often a very, very good sign, because it is that shift. And in that shift and or a dropping of a certain layer of identity. Because fourth is a lot like that. Like, you're identified with that. Like, she was identified with that movement. Again, not a bad thing. That's a beautiful thing. But when you start to shed layers of your identity, it really is like, if I'm not that, what am I? And so that confusion really arises, and it can even feel a little bit like anxiety, although it shouldn't be extreme anxiety. Again, it should be a fairly calm place if you're really moving into fifth density. It can be a little bit subtle, like, I don't know what I am. I don't know who I am if I'm not that which I've known for so long. But within that confusion is that kind of unraveling of those ideals and those concepts and beliefs that you had around yourself. And then if you allow the confusion, it's like a snow globe. It just shakes it up. You can't see anything. And if you just sit and allow, you're not trying to understand, you're not trying to change anything. the confusion will pass and you'll get really clear clarity. The clarity is on the other side of that confusion every single time. As long as you just kind of let it be. Okay, yep, I don't have a clue. I'm just going to let it be. It usually doesn't happen, you know, that confusion doesn't last a long period of time for that initial quick jump that we're talking about. Any more guidance with regards to just moving into fifth density, you know, is to see a couple of things. You know, we have this perception that we need to like do things for other people and we need to be around other people, and all of that is our way of validating ourselves. So seeing that you doing your work, you know, you turning in on yourself and finding deep layers of yourself is actually the highest service that you could do for anybody. So really validating and valuing that and allowing yourself to do it, and seeing it as, if not anything more valuable than being out and doing action that you think is helping people.
Yeah, it's really great, and it sort of calls you to surrender, right? Like you were talking about. You can really just surrender into that space. I was Charles Eisenstein says, despair is a phase of disintegration that creates an empty space into which something else can come. Right? Yes. That something that comes as a gift, not something that I am trying to figure out with my mind, but something that shows up. Yes. In response to in response to your quest for, you know, kind of a higher way of being. Mm-hmm. And it's lovely what, you know, just kind of to feel into that, to that allowing, right? That allowing of whatever's true, whatever's so.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it was kind of similar to what I was saying. Whereas if you're pulling out of other people's fields, you know, and other things, and you're really turning in, and even the senses, right? You're left with you. So it's very similar. Like you're turning into what may feel like a space initially, can even feel lonely, right? But it's not. It's being alone, and within that aloneness is you. And that can arise a much more powerful connection and beauty, of course.
Yeah, that's excellent. I have a question about parallel lifetimes. You talked about, you know, people, what we have talked about historically as past lives, because we've been in this idea of linear time. But being able to see parallel, maybe these lives as parallel lives, also, you know, kind of expands this context, and it makes it feels so much more fluid. Yes. Right? Like you mentioned, it's like going from photograph to photograph, within a lifetime, and then within a series of lifetimes, and maybe just dealing with whatever energetics were resonating with you at the time. Does that mean, and I've had discussions with this about someone before, that you don't haven't personally experienced that lifetime, or that it's you know, it's just something available in the consciousness for you to learn from? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. Because there's infinite potential, infinite possibilities. There are definitely, what comes through when I ask that question right now is there are definitely things in which your soul or oversoul has really taken on to experience. So that's where the choice of those particular experiences has really come in. And so, again, this is just what's coming through right now. So one of those things is, again, where I was talking about free will, right? Your soul has made determinations of what is desiring to really experience and help grow and help expand, and, you know, what needs to be understood for ascension. And so those choices are made as to what to experience. And so all of that potential may not be directly experienced, but if it is a quote unquote parallel life of yours, it has been experienced by your soul. Does that make sense?
Say that again.
So if it is quote unquote your parallel life, right? What I mean by that is to your particular soul. Because if you think about our soul as its own consciousness, even though it's not, but then it's branching out, and it's better to say its own expression, right? Because it's an expression, it's somewhat of a individuated expression of creation. It individuates into the oversoul, the soul, and then it individuates even further into lives. So if that life is connected to your soul, then on some level you have experienced it.
Yes. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But have you, as in your soul, experienced all the lives that have ever happened, everything? Not at the level of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
Of level of creation, you have experienced everything.
Yeah, that's excellent. Okay, so I think that is the last question I have. I think we've answered all of the questions.
Great.
So thank you very much. Can you tell us, do you have a website? Do you have, I know that you do private sessions. Do you want to let people know how to sort of get in touch with you? And I just want to note that we'll be back here next Thursday, and you'll be talking about self-acceptance, right?
How ironic. Yeah, I'll tell you why that's so ironic. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, so you can go to my website, www.shakti-ma, Shakti, S-H-A-K-T-I, ma.net. You can also find me on YouTube. I have a lot of content on YouTube. I do both, lectures like this, as well as I do divine transmissions where I'm bringing in very healing energy. And then I do actual online events, and I have one on Wednesday, next Wednesday, that's about forgiveness. So I was called very deeply to help bring in this energy of forgiveness. And it's a beautiful expression because the forgiveness ultimately is with creation, is the most subtle. Everything has, layers of its expression. And the most subtle layer of forgiveness is because of the perceived separation. And so it's with creation itself. The next layer of forgiveness is within ourselves, to ourselves. And then, of course, on top of that is forgiveness towards others. So I have an online event. You can go to my website and go to the events, and you can RSVP. It's sliding scale, donation based. And it'll all be on Zoom. You guys can choose to have video on or not, but we're going to go into some really beautiful, expansive states of forgiveness. And then I will be back here next Thursday. So, and I also have my Facebook page. So it is Facebook.com/shakti-ma.net.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much. This is really wonderful. I look forward to your event next Wednesday, and we'll see you on Thursday.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you.